Money is something that holds great value in today's world, yet it often raises a curious question: how can a simple piece of paper be worth so much? The cost of the paper itself is minimal, yet when marked with a value like 100, it is suddenly worth $100. This type of currency is known as fiat money, which has no intrinsic value but is accepted as legal tender by government decree. It is important to note that fiat money has no relation to the Fiat automobile brand from Italy. To understand fiat money, one must look at the history of money. In ancient times, people used the barter system, exchanging goods directly. For example, a person with bread might trade it for milk from someone who had extra. While practical at times, the barter system was limited and inefficient. It lacked a standard measure of value and relied on a double coincidence of wants. To overcome these issues, societies began to use commodity money, items with inherent value such as salt, shells, or livestock. In ancient China, India, and Africa, cowrie shells served as currency. Europeans even used them in trade, including the purchase of slaves. Cowrie shells were effective for small transactions, but as economies grew, the limitations became evident. Carrying large quantities was impractical, and their abundance in certain regions led to inflation, showing that the concept of inflation has existed for thousands of years. To address these shortcomings, around 600 BC, the Kingdom of Lydia in what is now Turkey introduced metal coins made from precious metals like gold and silver. These coins were durable, rare, and had intrinsic value. They often bore official seals or images of rulers to verify their authenticity and worth. Metal coins became a widespread medium of exchange, famously depicted in tales of treasure and pirate hoards. However, metal money also had its disadvantages. Gold, for example, is heavy and difficult to transport in large amounts. This challenge led to the invention of paper money, which first appeared in China during the Song dynasty. Initially, this paper functioned more like a receipt. People deposited their gold in banks and received paper notes representing the stored value. These notes could then be exchanged for goods and eventually redeemed for gold. This system was known as the gold standard, where paper currency was backed by a specific amount of gold. The gold standard became popular and was adopted across Europe by the 17th century. Under this system, countries maintained gold reserves to back their currencies. For example, if a nation had 1,000 ounces of gold, it could issue $1,000 in paper money, meaning each dollar represented 1 ounce of gold. This system remained in place for centuries, with many major countries participating, including the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Russia. However, the gold standard was difficult to maintain, especially during times of war. During World War I, countries printed more money than they had in gold reserves to fund military efforts. As a result, the value of money dropped, leading to inflation. After World War II, a new approach was needed to stabilize global economies. In 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement was established, where 44 countries decided to peg their currencies to the US dollar, which in turn was backed by the US gold reserves. The United States emerged as the dominant economic power after the war, holding around 70% of the world's gold. This made the US dollar the global standard. However, the system faced strain as the demand for US dollars outpaced the gold available. For instance, if the US had 10,000 ounces of gold, it could support $10,000 in currency. But international demand might have required $30,000, a gap that could not be filled with existing gold reserves. Increased military spending during conflicts like the Vietnam War further exacerbated the issue. In 1971, U.S. President Richard Nixon ended the gold standard in what became known as the Nixon shock. From that point forward, the U.S. dollar and most other currencies became fiat money, not backed by physical commodities. Fiat money derives its value from trust in the government that issues it. The word fiat is Latin for "let it be done." In history, kings would issue commands using a royal fiat, and people followed them. Similarly, a government declares that a piece of paper is worth a specific amount, and people accept it because they trust the government's authority and economic stability. This trust-based system only works if the issuing government remains stable. For example, the US dollar remains in demand globally due to confidence in the strength of the US economy. In contrast, in countries like Zimbabwe and Venezuela, poor governance and economic crises have led to hyperinflation and the collapse of local currencies. Fiat money has both advantages and disadvantages. One major advantage is its cost effectiveness. Unlike the gold standard, fiat money doesn't require large gold reserves. It gives governments and central banks flexibility to manage the economy. During financial crises, they can print more money, lower interest rates, and inject liquidity into the system to stimulate growth. However, fiat money also has risks. Printing excessive amounts can lead to inflation or even hyperinflation. Since its value is not tied to a tangible asset, it relies entirely on public confidence. If that trust is lost due to political instability or poor economic management, the currency can quickly lose value. Looking at the evolution of money, from bartering to commodities, metal coins, the gold standard, and now fiat, one might wonder what the future holds. Some believe the next stage could be cryptocurrency. Unlike fiat money, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are decentralized and not controlled by any government. They often have a fixed supply, which may help preserve their value. Countries like El Salvador have already adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. However, most people still treat cryptocurrency more as an investment than a medium of exchange. The reason is its high volatility. Prices can change dramatically in a short time. For example, buying a coffee for 0.001 Bitcoin today might cost 0.002 tomorrow, making daily transactions unstable. As of now, fiat money remains the primary form of currency worldwide. As long as governments maintain economic stability and public trust, fiat money is likely to continue dominating. However, if that trust fades and alternatives like cryptocurrency become more practical and widely accepted, the era of fiat money could eventually come to an end. Thanks for watching InvestingFlix. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and drop a comment below. For more expert insights on personal finance, investing, and wealth building, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out.